What if the biggest mystery in the entire Outlander universe was never Jamie's ghost, but Henry himself? After that shocking Blood of My Blood Season 1 finale, fans have been asking one massive question. Did Henry and Julia actually make it through the stones? Or did something go horribly wrong? Because if you look closely at the new Season 2 trailer, there's one moment that changes everything. A single emotional shot that seems to confirm Clare is finally going to find Henry. And honestly, if that really happens, this could become the most emotional story the franchise has ever told. The Season 2 trailer wastes absolutely no time throwing us back into chaos. The very first thing that stood out to me was how terrified Julia looked while standing near the stones. Last season already ended with the Grants closing in on them, but now the danger feels even worse. You can feel that nobody is safe anymore. And the trailer makes it very clear that Henry and Julia are running out of options fast. But then comes the moment that completely changed my entire theory about this season. There's a quick shot in the trailer where Clare appears to be standing inside an old abandoned church. At first, it looks like a normal emotional scene, but if you pause for even a second, you notice something strange. Clare is holding an old photograph in her hand, and the camera immediately cuts to a wounded man hiding in darkness. The trailer never fully shows his face, but the clothing looks incredibly similar to what Henry was wearing during the Season 1 finale. And if that really is Henry, then everything we thought we knew about the timeline could be wrong. Because here's the terrifying part. What if Henry made it through the stones, but Julia didn't? The trailer keeps separating them on purpose. Almost every shot of Julia feels isolated, cold, and desperate. Meanwhile, Henry's scenes feel completely different. There's one moment where he looks older, exhausted, and honestly broken, like somebody who has spent years searching for someone he lost forever. And if Blood of My Blood Season 2 is truly going in that direction, then this story could become far darker than fans expected. What makes this even more interesting is Clare herself. Ever since the original Outlander series ended, fans have been wondering whether the franchise would finally explore more of Clare's family history. Season 8 kept bringing up her parents over and over again, and at the time, it felt intentional, almost like the writers were preparing us for something bigger. Now Season 2 suddenly seems ready to pay all of that off, and honestly, I don't think it's a coincidence anymore. The trailer heavily focuses on Clare's emotional reactions rather than action. That alone tells me this season might not just be about survival. It might be about discovery. About Clare finally learning the truth behind the people she lost before she could even remember them. But there's another detail hidden in the trailer that nobody is talking about enough. At one point, Clare can be heard saying, "I know your face." That line only lasts a second, but it completely changes the emotional weight of the story. Because imagine Henry finally standing in front of his daughter after years of believing he lost her forever. Except now she's fully grown, living in a completely different timeline, and has absolutely no idea who he really is. That reunion alone could become one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire franchise, and the writers know exactly how powerful that would be. Outlander has always been obsessed with tragic reunions. Jamie and Clare, Brianna and Jamie, Roger finding Jemmy. The entire franchise is built around families being torn apart by time itself. So having Clare unknowingly meet her own father before learning the truth feels exactly like the kind of emotional twist these writers love to create. But there's still one massive problem here. Where is Julia? Because the trailer almost feels like it's hiding her fate on purpose. There's a blink and you miss it scene showing a woman screaming while soldiers drag someone away in the background. Most fans assumed it was just another random dramatic moment. I don't think so at all. I think that scene might secretly reveal Julia getting captured by the Grants after failing to escape through the stones. And if that theory is true, then Season 2 could split into two completely different storylines. One storyline follows Henry surviving in another timeline while desperately trying to reconnect with Clare. The second follows Julia trapped in the past, possibly believing her husband and daughter are gone forever. Just imagine how emotionally devastating that would be. Both parents spending years trying to protect Clare without ever realizing she's alive somewhere else. Honestly, that sounds exactly like classic Outlander storytelling. But things get even darker when you think about William. The trailer barely shows him at all, and that immediately worried me. Because whenever a show hides a child character this much, it usually means something terrible happened. What if William never crossed through the stones with Henry? What if he was left behind during the chaos? That possibility becomes even scarier when you remember the Grant family still needs an heir. Malcolm is gone. The clan is unstable, and a child with blood ties to the family would suddenly become incredibly valuable. The Grants could easily decide to raise William themselves, completely separating him from his real parents. Now imagine the long-term consequences of that. William grows up surrounded by the same people who destroyed his family. He's raised to believe the Grants are protecting him. Meanwhile, Henry and Julia spend years trying to find him again. That kind of emotional conflict could carry this show for multiple seasons. And honestly, I think the writers are already setting it up. There's one moment in the trailer where an older woman tells a child, "Your family abandoned you." We never actually see who she's talking to, but if that line is directed at William, then this story could become absolutely tragic. Because Outlander loves generational pain. It loves the idea that history keeps repeating itself, no matter how hard characters try to escape it. Jamie lost family, Clare lost family, Brianna grew up separated from her father, and now Blood of My Blood may be creating another heartbreaking cycle through William. At the same time, Season 2 also looks ready to push Ellen and Brian deeper into danger. Their romance was already complicated last season, but now war is getting closer, and that changes everything. The trailer shows Brian preparing for battle multiple times, while Ellen seems increasingly terrified about what's coming. And if you know Outlander history, then you already know tragedy follows this family everywhere. The most interesting part is how the trailer keeps showing Dougal watching Brian from a distance. There's still tension between them, but it also feels different now. Less hatred and more reluctant respect. I honestly think Season 2 will slowly begin repairing their relationship through war, because fighting side by side changes people. And the franchise has always loved turning enemies into uneasy allies when survival becomes more important than pride. But even with all the war, time travel, and family drama happening, the emotional center of this season still feels incredibly clear to me. Clare. Everything keeps pointing back to her. Every mystery, every timeline, every emotional reveal. And if the trailer is truly teasing Clare finally meeting Henry, then Blood of My Blood Season 2 might completely change how fans look at the entire Outlander story forever. But the more I watched the trailer, the more one specific moment started bothering me. It happens incredibly fast, almost too fast to notice the first time. Clare is standing outside during a storm while someone behind her whispers, "You were never meant to find him." And immediately after that line, the trailer cuts to Henry collapsing onto the ground, like his body is finally giving up after years of running. That cannot be random. In fact, I think Season 2 is secretly setting up one of the darkest twists this franchise has ever done. Because what if Henry didn't just survive the stones? What if the time travel itself damaged him somehow? We already know from Outlander that traveling through the stones is dangerous. Some people survive it better than others, and sometimes the consequences don't appear immediately. Nosebleeds, physical weakness, memory problems. The franchise has hinted many times that time travel leaves scars behind. But Blood of My Blood may finally explore that idea in a much more tragic way. Think about Henry's condition in the trailer. He looks exhausted in almost every scene. Pale, confused, almost haunted. There's even one moment where he stares into a mirror and barely seems to recognize himself anymore. And honestly, I don't think that's just emotional trauma. I think the stones themselves are slowly destroying him. Now, imagine how heartbreaking that would make his reunion with Clare. After spending years trying to survive and find his daughter, Henry finally reaches her, only to realize he may not have much time left. That would perfectly fit the emotional tone Outlander always goes for. The franchise loves giving characters hope right before tragedy strikes. And if that's where Season 2 is heading, fans are absolutely not ready for it. But there's another mystery here that feels even bigger. How exactly does Clare find Henry in the first place? Because according to the trailer, it doesn't happen by accident. Clare seems to be actively searching for someone. There are several scenes showing her reading old letters, investigating records, and visiting locations connected to her parents. One shot even shows her holding a map covered in notes and dates. That tells me Clare finally starts questioning everything she was told growing up. And honestly, It's about time. One thing fans always wanted from Outlander was more focus on Clare's past. We spent years learning about Jamie's family history, but Clare's parents always remained this huge unanswered mystery hanging over the entire story. The original series gave us tiny pieces here and there, but never the full truth. Now Blood of My Blood finally has the chance to change that. And the emotional payoff could be massive. Because imagine Claire slowly realizing her parents didn't simply disappear. Imagine her discovering they spent years fighting to get back to her. Every clue she uncovers would completely change how she sees her own life. Suddenly, her entire identity becomes connected to this much bigger story involving time travel, sacrifice, and survival. That's the kind of emotional revelation that could redefine the franchise. But at the same time, the trailer keeps hinting that somebody desperately wants these secrets buried forever. And I think that person might actually be connected to the Grants. There's one incredibly suspicious scene where a man tells Henry, if she remembers the truth, everything falls apart. Now, we never see who he's talking about directly, but it feels painfully obvious the line is about Claire. The question is, what truth are they hiding? Because I don't think this is only about Claire's parents anymore. I think Blood of My Blood, Season 2, is about to reveal that Claire's entire family history has been manipulated for years. What if somebody intentionally separated Claire from Henry and Julia? What if her parents didn't simply fail to return to her? What if they were prevented from doing it? That would completely change the emotional meaning behind the original Outlander story. Suddenly, Claire's loneliness as a child becomes even more tragic, because her parents may have spent years trying to reach her while powerful people worked against them from the shadows. And honestly, the trailer feels loaded with hints supporting that idea. The biggest clue might actually be the repeated focus on old documents burning. Fire appears constantly throughout the trailer. Letters destroyed, records disappearing, entire rooms going up in flames. That cannot just be visual symbolism. It feels deliberate, almost like somebody is erasing evidence before Claire uncovers the truth. And if that's happening, then Season 2 could introduce an entirely new side of the Outlander universe, a hidden conflict surrounding the stones themselves. Because, let's be honest, we still barely understand time travel in this franchise. Even after all these years, the rules remain mysterious. Certain bloodlines seem connected to the stones. Certain people can travel while others cannot. And there are still unanswered questions about who truly understands how the stones work. Blood of My Blood might finally start exploring that mythology in a much deeper way, especially through Claire. The trailer keeps framing her differently this season. She doesn't look like someone simply reacting to events anymore. She looks like someone beginning to understand her own importance. There's even a moment where another character tells her, "You carry more than their name." That line instantly caught my attention because it sounds much bigger than family drama. It sounds like destiny. And if Claire's connection to time travel is somehow stronger than we realized, then Henry finding her may not be coincidence at all. It may have been inevitable from the very beginning. But while all of this is happening, Julia's storyline looks absolutely devastating. Honestly, I think she's going to suffer the most this season. The trailer shows her trapped several times, and every scene feels darker than the last. There's one horrifying moment where she appears locked inside a room while soldiers search the property outside. Another scene shows her crying while holding William close, like she already knows they're about to be separated. That alone nearly convinced me William will not stay with her. And if the Grants really take him, then Julia's story could become emotionally brutal. Because unlike Henry, she may not even know Claire survived. Just think about that for a second. Henry possibly spends years searching for Claire. Claire searches for answers about her parents. Meanwhile, Julia remains trapped in the past, believing she lost both her husband and daughter forever. That level of emotional pain feels exactly like something this franchise would do, especially because Outlander has always been obsessed with impossible choices. Save your child or save yourself. Stay with the person you love or protect your family. Change history or accept tragedy, and Blood of My Blood. Season 2 looks ready to push those themes harder than ever before, but the most heartbreaking possibility of all might involve Claire eventually learning that her parents sacrificed everything for her. Every painful decision, every separation, every year lost to time itself. If Henry finally tells Claire the truth, I honestly think it could become one of the most emotional scenes in the entire Outlander universe. Because Claire spent her whole life believing she was abandoned by fate, only to discover she was loved enough for people to destroy their lives trying to save hers. But here's where the trailer becomes truly unsettling. Right when it feels like season 2 is building toward an emotional reunion, the entire tone suddenly changes. The music gets darker, the dialogue becomes more desperate, and one line in particular completely stopped me the first time I heard it. Some people should never cross time. That single sentence changes everything, because until now, Blood of My Blood seemed focused mainly on family and survival. But what if season 2 is secretly introducing consequences far bigger than we expected? What if Henry surviving the stones created problems that were never supposed to happen in the first place? And honestly, the trailer keeps hinting at exactly that. There are several strange moments where time itself almost feels unstable. Clocks stopping, candles blowing out without wind, characters hearing voices before anyone appears. At one point, Claire even looks directly behind her after hearing somebody whisper her name, but nobody is there. That feels incredibly intentional. I think the show is starting to suggest that time travel leaves behind echoes, traces of people who crossed through the stones. And if Henry has been traveling across different timelines trying to survive, he may have unintentionally damaged something much bigger than himself. Now imagine Claire slowly realizing her father's survival could actually threaten the timeline itself. That would create an absolutely brutal emotional conflict. Because how do you choose between protecting history and saving your own family? Especially after spending your entire life searching for answers. Outlander has always loved impossible emotional choices, and this feels like the ultimate version of that idea. But things get even stranger when you focus on Jamie's connection to all of this. Yes, Jamie. Even though Blood of My Blood mainly focuses on the past, the trailer includes several moments that feel directly connected to him. There's one scene where Claire touches an old Fraser ring before suddenly becoming emotional for no clear reason. Another moment shows Henry staring at a portrait that looks shockingly similar to Jamie himself. And honestly, I don't think that's fan service. I think season 2 is preparing to reveal that Henry already knew far more about Claire's future than we realized. Remember, if Henry traveled across timelines for years, then it's completely possible he eventually learned about Jamie Fraser. Maybe he discovered the man his daughter was destined to fall in love with long before Claire herself ever met him.